Hey, everybody. Before we begin the show, I wanted to give a shout out to our friends at PowerPool. PowerPool is a mining pool and is one of the most profitable for miners. So if you have one miner at home or a fleet of miners at scale, point your workers to PowerPool to enjoy the best payouts. PowerPool supports a number of algorithms, SHA-256 for Bitcoin, X11 for Dash, and others. And of course, we're focused and we care about the most, S-CRYPT for Litecoin, Dogecoin, and now Bell's Coin, merge mining. Pointing your workers to PowerPool is easy with its simple user interface, and the platform also has all the reporting available that your operation needs. Typically, PowerPool extends a low 1% pool fee. However, if you register with the 84 million link in the show notes, you will lock in a sub 1% pool fee, which is excellent. So start mining with the most profitable pool in 2024 and register for PowerPool with the link in the show notes. Cheers, happy mining. Hello and welcome to the 84 Million podcast. Today we're on episode number 23. And our guest tonight is Aldo. He's a dedicated Litecoin community member who has written several articles on Litecoin over the years, with articles being featured in the Litecoin Foundation newsletter. Al was born in the U.S. to a family of first-generation Mexican immigrants, where he lived most of his life until moving to Mexico for college and later returning to the U.S. to practice as a dentist. Al has lived between both countries and sees Litecoin as the ideal method for cross-border transactions. Find him on X at Lighthouse, and that's H-A-U-S, Lite_Haus. So Litecoin, Al, it's funny, I referred to you in our episode with John as almost a year ago, episode 10, as Litecoin AI, because I couldn't read it, and I used to call you AI.
Yeah.
And then I realized it's Al. And pardon me, and I can actually formally ask for your forgiveness for that.
That's totally fine. I think a few people have actually mentioned that before, but I figured Al is easier to say than Aldo. A lot of people, for some reason, they can't say Aldo, so I just stuck to Al, but apparently it's more confusing. So
Yeah, I don't want to confuse anybody here, but I was confused because I can't read. So that L and the I's are nearly indistinguishable, so that's where I erred. But either way, good to meet you. I'm surprised we haven't met already. I was bummed you weren't at the summit this summer, but you've certainly been at them in the past. And our friend John Ez, he recommended, like I said, over a year ago, having you on, and we kind of communicated here and there, and now we made it happen. So very cool. So welcome to the show.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here too.
Glad to have you. So we'll probably graze like we did in that episode, but I'd like to do that maybe near the end after we maybe deal with the topic. And I think it's an important topic. It's one I don't have a whole lot of experience with, practically, at least on the legacy side of things, right? And that is international remittance. So I know you mentioned before you've lived across both sides of the southern border. You have family, I imagine, on both sides, or at least in Mexico too, in addition to the United States. And you've actually used some of the services that people typically use to transmit money here and there. So kind of tell us about that. And, why do we do it? What's the use case? What does it look like in Mexico, versus the United States, and just the money systems, et cetera?
Sure. So, I mean, growing up here in the U.S., honestly, I wasn't that exposed to the whole money transferring situation. I knew there were a lot of immigrants here, like illegals and everything, but honestly, I never really used to pay that much attention to like how much money is actually flowing out of the U.S. until I actually went off to college in Mexico. So I know that sounds pretty unusual, like someone who grew up in the U.S. going to college in Mexico, but the school I went to had an affiliation to the U.S. So I went to that school so I actually lived in Mexico for almost 7 years throughout college. So pretty much I completely dove into Mexican culture while I was there. And that's actually where I met my wife. So my wife is with me here now in the US, but I finished college before she actually did. So I had finished up, I came back to the US, and my wife was still finishing up her last year of college. So the first time I actually ever tried, so she needed money for something for like school related, and I told her not to bug her parents about it. So I mean, she wasn't working or anything, so I told her let's try Litecoin to see how it works. Because when I was in college, thankfully, I had the opportunity for my parents to support me while I was over there. I mean, I couldn't be working. I mean, I could be working in Mexico, but I mean, the salary can be really low over there. So thankfully, I had the opportunity for my family to actually be sending me money while I was over there studying. And it was really inefficient through the traditional banking system. So typically they would, I mean, they gave me a debit card linked to their account, and I would go to the ATM in Mexico and take money out. But I think every time it must have been minimum $5. And I think I would maybe take out like, it wasn't that much. Maybe I would take out like 150 or $200 a week. And every time $5, $5, $5. And I mean, I know it might not sound like a lot, but it starts adding up over time. And imagine someone that simply doesn't have like good income. Imagine like a low income family, and those little fees, like they really start to affecting them over time. So that was pretty much my almost 7 years in Mexico, where my family was sending money little by little. But at the time, since I was just studying the whole time, unfortunately, I didn't really learn so much about Bitcoin at the time. So, I mean, if I did, like I would have told them, I said, let's try crypto, like when I tried in crypto. But unfortunately, I didn't know about Bitcoin or Litecoin at the time. So when I came back to the US finally, that's when I really had time to start studying Litecoin. So my wife, she was finishing up her last year, and I told her open up an exchange account. So in Mexico, the biggest exchange is called Bitso. And she opened up an account, and it was pretty easy for her. I thought she wasn't gonna really. I thought she was gonna struggle a little bit more, but she got it. I mean, she's on her phone for the vast majority of her day, like messaging friends and family and everything. So it was pretty easy, like for her making that transition to opening up the account on exchange. And I sent her Litecoin, and I think she wasn't like literally on the computer the whole time, like second by second, like waiting for the exchange. So I sent it over in like half an hour. I told her, can you check if you received the Litecoin? She went on the account for exchange. She had it in there. And then the cool thing about Bitso, I don't know if they still do this, but I know that they used to, is that they had a really fast withdrawal time to her bank account. So she sold the Litecoin for Mexican pesos, and she must have taken like half an hour driving from her house to the ATM, and it was already there.
Okay.
Super, like this all happened maybe within like an hour and a half. We're here being in the US, sending her Litecoin over there, and she's pretty much had it. I mean, within that time frame, 4 cents. I mean, we all know how cheap it is to send Litecoin. I wish more people knew about that, but unfortunately, they're still trying to send Bitcoin on chain, which is ridiculous. But at the time, so I would talk to her about crypto, and she didn't really care much until she saw how efficient that was. So she saw how easy it was, me sending her Litecoin to her, and her having selling that Litecoin for Mexican pesos, having that all within like an hour and a half or so. And after that, she loved crypto. I mean, not like we do, but she, like, once in a while she asks, "Oh, how's everything crypto doing? Is it doing okay?" You know, I guess you need like firsthand experience to really grasp what it's all about.
Yeah, that's good. So she wasn't really into crypto at all, but it was a practical means to an end, and it was dramatically better than what you had done prior to that. When did you initially go, if you could share this, initially to Mexico? It sounded like it was pre-crypto, or?
This was in 2011.
Okay.
Or it was right around when Bitcoin, well, I mean, Bitcoin was already created, but I was so busy with school that I don't think I had time to study it.
Yeah.
Like it didn't even cross my feed, like social media feed at all or anything. I don't know.
Well, it's like, what kind of exchanges would have you even had available for Bitcoin back then? Like Bitcoin, you could have got it. Well, you wouldn't have had the fees you have now, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
where would have you liquidated it in 2011? I mean, Mount Gox was around, but that was all I can remember. But
Yeah,
I wasn't trading anything at that point. I was more of a just spectator on the sidelines. I knew about it, but I wasn't using it at all. It was too
sure.
confusing. The user experience was horrible. Um, very confusing stuff. And then of course, Litecoin 2011 October was this month, 13 years ago, that's when that launched. So that was just starting. It sounds like when you were over there. Well, I went to actually, so I won't reveal where you're at, but I'm in Texas. So we're on the border, right? And,
Mhm.
I actually went to one of our grocery stores today, which we love. Civilization is here, called HEB. They're not in other southwestern states yet, although they do have them in Mexico, interestingly enough. It actually started in San Antonio, Texas, and kind of went throughout the state. And they have, I think, 11 or 15
Mhm.
stores in Mexico. Interestingly, and this is totally a side note, they have crypto ATMs in there, Litecoin, and
Oh,
a few different ones. So I was like that. But I went in knowing that we were going to have this chat, and I went to the counter because they do like money remittance services, and I just wanted to kind of chat with them. And they don't have MoneyGram, but they do have Western Union. And I just kind of spoke with her for a few minutes, the woman behind the counter, and she was able to give me some tips on how it worked. But it sounds reasonable. Like if you didn't have crypto, I'm sure you'd be glad to have a service like that. But
mhm.
it's definitely a lot slower. We're not talking about what you described, sending Litecoin to your girlfriend and her having it, near almost immediately.
Yeah,
And then of course the fees are really the big part. Um,
yeah.
I was reading reports and actually have them in front of me. I kind of tempted to read some of these, but I may not. But um, just how much is transmitted in terms of cross-border payments, and then how much these services cost. The person using them, and it's not 2 cents or fractions of a penny. I mean, currently it would be fractions of a penny for Litecoin. So you can do it with Bitcoin. I would probably say even with Bitcoin, it would be cheaper than these services, but you'd dramatically better with Litecoin and faster, and you're not going to deal with mempool clogging up. Um,
Yeah.
I actually mentioned actually too, where I'm like, by the way, I don't know if you're familiar with Litecoin, but it's sold right over there. And I pointed to the ATM, and I'm like, in case anybody ever wants a cheaper option, they can consider that. The only probably negative would be if the exchange they're offloading to fiat, if that has a fee, because that would be where you maybe would get, kind of bit, but that
Yeah.
varies from exchange to exchange. And I know sometimes the ATMs aren't cheap to use, but they're available. So
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's a little tricky because sometimes the fees are hidden.
mhm.
So at first, like say that it probably depends from ATM to ATM, but say if you're gonna get cash out of, or I mean, if you want to buy a Bitcoin from one, it might say like it's no fees, but then in the conversion, that's where they're kind of hiding those fees. So I think it'd be a little tricky.
Mhm.
I think ultimately the end goal is for, I mean, obviously this is a dream, right? But for actual businesses to be able to directly accept that Litecoin without having to convert over, right? That would be that would be the dream. But I mean, it's going to be a couple of years or decades till we get to that point. But yeah, because
Yes, I think that sounds optimistic. Decades, not so much, but but a couple of years, we'll take that, because there was a period where we were actually, and this goes back into the scaling debate, and why are these? I'm pretty sure Square. I'm pretty sure Square had it, and I want to say I linked it out somewhere in a conversation in the past year or two, that they were supporting crypto and then they stopped. Um, and we were doing better a few years ago, and that's one of like Roger Vere's kind of arguments. And then of course he released his hijacking Bitcoin book. But yeah, we've kind of gone backwards with the point of sale crypto experience, which is sad.
Mhm.
But we take it at the 84 million shop. I don't think that's news to anybody, but we're very small, and we're not, HEB or, you know, Whole Foods or wherever you're shopping, like we want to see it everywhere, and I know there's some apps that are sort of working on that. I know John Kim and Flexa and that whole kind of concept is sort of vehicling into those. But I mean, there's no reason why you can't do Litecoin on chain at point of sale.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as many companies as possible. I mean, that can help with that payment experience. I mean, it'd be awesome. Like flex up. The only thing that does worry me a little bit is the hidden fees, right? Because it's not so obvious, but like let's say like we were saying earlier, like a family of immigrants over here, like they don't really know English, like they don't speak it as their first language. They're just trying to figure things out. Like even a little bit of technology is really confusing for them. I think it's really easy for companies to kind of take advantage of that. So whoever probably figures out like a very transparent way of communicating that over to those families, I think it's going to be like a really awesome idea.
How did initially was your girlfriend, now your wife? Does her family use Litecoin or crypto to, transmit money back and forth between you guys, or did they learn from that example and like it's expanded, or was it just limited to that?
It was just limited to that. So ever since then, we haven't been sending money back and forth. But I have had to send money to businesses though, not with crypto in Mexico. So for example, last year I had my wedding in Mexico, and all the wedding services. I mean, you have to send them pesos, right? So I had to go to my local bank to have wire transfer done. And even that experience. So fortunately, my bank. I mean, so this is one of the things I was mentioning earlier, that they charge zero fees, but they do hide a little bit. They gain from the conversion rate. So they say, oh yeah, this is a no fee transfer, but they do gain a little bit with the conversion. But I think I had to do that like 7 times, wire transferring, and that was so much more complicated than a crypto transaction, because you have to ask for their address, you have to their Swift code, and then there, aside from the Swift, there's another code that you also have to have. Things like 6 lines of information that you have to do an international wire transfer, which I thought was like insane. And then it took minimum, I think it was 2 days, two or 3 days for the transfer to go through. So, I mean, you can't really confirm it. I mean, you just see the money leave your account, and then you don't know where it's at. Right? Like, did it go through? Did it not go through? And then I had to actually email them, like, you received the money? Like, I don't know if you have the money. And if they would have told me, no, we don't have the money, even though they do, like, how do I confirm that,
Wow. Yeah.
Like, they can't even lie about that and say, no, we haven't received the money. Can you send it again? And I just have like no way to confirm that. I mean, unless I go to my bank and like really research, but it's difficult. And with blockchain, it's way easier to identify that sort of thing.
Yeah. Wow. That was actually interesting when I spoke with the kind of the representative from Western Union earlier today. That was interesting too, because it sounds like it's basically like a full-blown KYC sort of thing with limits. And I think the maximum, what I found online, it said it was, what did it say? Up to 3,000 a day. But it looks like if you verify it, you can go up to 50,000 in a day. In terms of like the cap amount you can transmit. Okay. But at the kiosk I was at today, they said the maximum is actually 7,000 per day, like period. And if you don't know the other party, they will not authorize you to send it. And that's more for them to like cover their own and to cover you, to be fair, because they said there's a lot of scams and frauds and people want you to wire the money. And so they said, unless you actually have a relationship with the other party, they won't actually even authorize it. So that's a lot of permission, right? It might be good permission to protect you, but it's still a lot of permission, right? Let's say, you had someone you were confident in, but you never transacted with them. They actually wouldn't let you put it through. That was actually surprising to me. But the other thing is, in our traditional banking system, it's very, and we're not doing a lot of big purchases, right? I mean, maybe some of us are, but if we're at the grocery store, even with inflation as bad as it is, like, it's a few $100 worst case scenario, unless you have a really big family or something, right? So we're not really transacting in large volumes, but like if you needed to, that would be important. And like you're paying for a wedding, those aren't cheap. Like you probably do have to max these things out. Then you're going to have to do it over a multiple period of days, or figure something else out. And like there's no limit on sending value in Litecoin except for maybe self limitations due to fear. Like, oh, I'm going to hit send and this is going to go and I can't reverse it. I would say that's the only negative with blockchain. And it's not even a negative. It's just a fact. I think it's a good thing. You just need to make sure you don't, mistype your address. Like we always copy and paste, right? These are rudimentary practices for anybody listening that hasn't done this, which I think is probably like 3 of you, but either way, like rudimentary to have your alphanumeric string be absolutely appropriate. Otherwise you could send it into a black hole or something like that. I remember Ethereum Classic years ago, I did that. And that was tricky too, because like you could send it to an ETH address versus an ETC address. And like, you don't want to do that either. Kind of like, if you have Bitcoin Cash, don't send to a Bitcoin address or something, things can happen. But that's the worst case scenario. It's going to go through. So if you know that the address is correct, you have confidence. So there's really no limitations if you're confident that it's going where it needs to go, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's already kind of what they do with wire transfers. When you're making one, they actually let you know, like, hey, like if you give us the wrong information, like you're screwed. I mean, that's what they tell you. But
so it happens on both sides. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So crypto, I mean, it's just kind of like a lateral move in that sense. But I think it could be pretty easy preventing that sort of situation. Maybe just say like applications, like they give you like a warning screen, like are you absolutely sure that this is the correct address? I don't know, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. And we're used to it, but I still, it's one of those things where I know, like viscerally, like it must be correct, and there's really no way around it, because there's nobody else checking the validity of things. It's me and the other party, and then a network in between, right? So again, it's as simple as copy and paste, right? Not hard, but just make sure you're doing just simple things like that, and you won't have any issues. But I would think that would be the only way you wouldn't have your A to B situation work out. And it's going to go A to B. It's just maybe that's not the B you intended, right? So haven't done a whole lot of experimenting and sending to wrong addresses on purpose. So
the Sinaloa cartel or something, you should.
Very good. Testing services to a cartel. They can take our dusting in our experimentation. Well, I mean, there's a lot of money. I think our friends that look into Litecoin, when I was kind of looking into this, they had a little article about this, and I thought it was good. They were quoting about, on average, I think it's like 6.5% or something on average, people are paying to transmit money, right? And a lot of money is moving, like lots of money. Like here's just a few stats. 1 billion people participate in remittances. That's according to a MONEYGRAM State of Remittances report that I downloaded. I'll link it in the show notes. Last year, the value of remittances worldwide was estimated to be 883 billion. And then they'll go up to 913 billion by next year. Top 5 countries, Mexico is second place at 67 billion. First place would be US to India, 125 billion. China, 50 billion. The Philippines, 40 billion. Egypt, 24 billion. And then the top service providers, I'll call them, would be for Western Union, MoneyGram, or PayPal Zoom. So, I mean, we're talking 69 million transactions just in the first quarter of 2024 with Western Union. That is a lot of fees.
Yeah, that's insane.
And that's a lot of service, but I mean, that's people and buildings, and like that makes Litecoin look really lightweight.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Miners and nodes scattered all over the place.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just like you were saying, like you're not really familiar with people who like send money from here to Mexico. And like, I didn't even know about this either until I actually lived over there. But it's crazy how this is happening so much every day. And like, we just don't really like tune into this. The numbers are insane.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I guess to define remittances, it's like, well, what is a remittance? Don't we send money all over the place all the time? It's technically like a non-commercial nature would be considered a remittance. So like you're sending money to family. I think the number one was like people sending funds to their mom. I think that was the first like category of person-to-person relation that was like sender receiver. And then, of course, there was like friends and siblings and things like that. But there's a lot of familial support through money, of course. It's how the world works, but people have to send it across borders. And you can send it across borders. People are in magnitude sending these things across borders, but they're paying for it. And I think blockchain really does, quote, fix this, right? So Litecoin, I mean, if you're looking at 6.68% or whatever it is, or, $5 to $10 a transaction compared to sub a penny, I mean, that's gigantic.
Yeah.
You could send it every day and have almost zero consequences. I mean, I'm sure people doing this sort of thing aren't doing these transfers every day. They're bundling and batching them. Hey, I'll go every other week or once a month, to kind of mitigate the fees.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how it is in Texas, but I'm guessing it's probably similar to California. But have you ever uh, maybe like driven around an area where there's like a lot of people from Latin America, and you see all those little money transfer businesses like on a Friday afternoon, like all of them are packed.
Mm-hmm.
There's like lines going outside of them, like people just trying to send money home from the week from the money they made that week. Really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, all of the HEBs have it. We're near San Antonio. So, I mean, large Mexican-American population, like historic and new, like it's just mixed. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of them downtown if I were to go to like downtown San Antonio, but I've not been there on a Friday afternoon. So I have not witnessed it. But I'm sure it's happening. I mean, the economy here is crazy. I mean, constructions workers, I mean, all sorts of, there's lots of labor from all over the place here. So
maybe it'd be a good idea opening like a Litecoin booth on a Friday night after work outside of one of those, and then handing out little Litecoin pamphlets or something.
You should come over and help me start it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then I'll come to Southern California. We could do it on your end too. We can see like a test. Who's more receptive, the folks in Texas or California or something? Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's part of the world. I think this is a really big case for Litecoin. I think the barriers are also really interesting. And that would be in terms of, even if everything works correctly, what is the time? And then other things where it's like, you just can't have a transaction. Like we talked about, if you don't know the recipient, you can't transact. If it's over $7,000 and a penny, you can't transact. At least speaking about Western Union. I don't know about MoneyGram. But what about these other factors that influence transfer times? Banking hours. So HEB is not open 24 hours a day, or any of their other sites. Holidays, closed. Security checks. Currency availability. Regulatory issues. So that would probably be, even though we're in the clear here, maybe the other side's not. Consumer protection issues, that's related to what I shared earlier. Identification requirements, delivery restrictions, agent location hours, and time zones. So that's a lot. And I mean, we have enough barriers working within a bank account domestically and not even going anywhere, overseas, even though kind of this whole idea of borders is sort of irrelevant with technology, but we still act like it's a causal factor of delay when it's like, I don't know why it is, because blockchain has zero inhibitions with anything geographic.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that, fees and then all these other availabilities. And it's like, even if you pay the fees, the fastest. So I was surprised. She said, if you're going from Western Union to, like, let's say a Mexico at an HEB Western Union, it could be there in 10 minutes. That's pretty good. That's Bitcoin without congestion on the mempool. Fees a little bit different, although fees have been much worse on Bitcoin than $6 or $7. So it probably beats Bitcoin in many ways, at least congested Bitcoin. But that's the best case. It looks like other times you're looking at a day or 5, and that's a big stretch of time that you have to bake in between A and B and the full transaction confirmation, right?
Yeah, and especially, I mean, if it's an emergency, right? I mean, because a lot of immigrants, they come over here by themselves, and they literally leave their whole family behind, like wife, children. cousins, everyone, and they're over here by themselves, or maybe like a friend that they decided to come with. And if there's a family member back home having an emergency, like I really doubt they're gonna want to wait those 3 days, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of tough situations like that. But yeah, I think that's probably a very good goal, is to see how we can get Litecoin in the hands of more immigrants, or at least, I mean, there'd probably be some Spanish oriented education. But the thing is, we went to kind of like study. I mean, it's a difficult topic because, I mean, 80% or 90% of people in my social circle, they're Mexican, right? But hardly anyone talks about crypto, and they're not really that interested in it. There's just a lot of other things that Mexicans are are interested in. I mean, it's just on a popular topic, and but I think it's also a cultural thing, because Mexicans were really used to kind of just like staying in our lane, and not really focusing about external stuff, kind of just like living our day-to-day life. I mean, we all know there's like so much corruption in the government, that every president is super corrupt, the cartels, like there's a lot of corruption in Mexico, but people kind of just like look past everything and they decide to focus on their external circle. So, I mean, I think in that aspect, it might be a little tough to like really get that message across. But hopefully, if it happens within the U.S., so something Mexico is good at is picking up on things that are happening within the U.S., since Mexico literally right across the border. But there's, I mean, super close. If anything popular is beginning in the U.S., a lot of times it kind of transfers over to Mexico. So hopefully, if we get some action picking up in here, it could kind of like transfer over first to the border cities, maybe like northern Mexico, Tijuana, all that, and then from there it starts to kind of move downwards. In Mexico, I have seen some areas where I've seen like a few more like Bitcoin accepted here letters, but it tends to be like surfer towns where there's a lot of people kind of coming and leaving, like in Oaxaca, which is like, it's kind of like blowing up right now. There's a coastal city called Puerto Escondido, where like a lot of Americans go there to like surf, Canadians go there. There's people working from home. Like you walk through the streets and it's all completely foreigners. And right there, I've seen a lot of Bitcoin accepted here stickers. And it also seems like there's a ripple effect kind of happening from El Salvador. So since El Salvador is becoming Bitcoin country, I went to Costa Rica a couple of months ago, and there were a lot of Bitcoin accepted here letters in Costa Rica. So, and Oaxaca in Mexico, the area I was mentioning right now, it's also really to the south, like kind of close to El Salvador. So I also think there's somewhat a ripple effect happening from El Salvador, where it's kind of starting to spread to the other Central American countries, and hopefully maybe further north as well.
I see. You mentioned to me the other day about Bukele. Do you have any opinions on him, or what is going on there specifically?
So yes and no. So I'm not from there, but I've spoken to people who are from there. So one of the things I like about my job, which has absolutely nothing to do with crypto, but what I do like about it is I get to speak to a lot of different people from like different backgrounds. So one of them was from El Salvador, and she was telling me, and I asked her where she was from because I knew her accent wasn't Mexicans, and she told me that she came from El Salvador about 15 years ago, and asked her what she thought about Bukele. And she said that he's freaking amazing. Like he's like the best thing that could have ever happened to El Salvador. And she brought up that a lot of people think he's kind of like a dictator because he's kind of like doing whatever he wants. But she said that the people who are saying that, they have no idea how bad El Salvador previously was. That every time she left her home when she was a child, her mom was like dying, worrying that she didn't know if that was the last day she was going to see her daughter. Like simply from her leaving her house to go to school. She thought that maybe on the way to school that she was going to get kidnapped, raped, killed
Wow.
by getting the S-CRYPT. So, and those are the criminals that Bukele he went like viral for arresting like thousands of them and having it in the state prison. And yeah, she said it was that bad that every day, like you would walk down the street and you would see a body on the floor, just like super dangerous. And now, for ever since Bukele went into office, she said that this is the first time ever since she came back to the U.S. that she's ever been able to travel back to her hometown and know that nothing was going to happen to her.
Wow.
In so many years.
I would say that's positive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing, actually. I'm sure they're grateful for him if that's the case. Yeah, I've heard it from the spectators here, a dictator. It's like, what are the people think, and that sounds, I mean, it's one person, extremely small sample, the extreme small sample size, but I mean, that sounds positive. So, in terms of adopting Bitcoin as its currency and international remittances, I want to say we were talking about something along those lines. Did you have a comment there?
So I think Bukele had mentioned during the initial months when he decided to make Bitcoin legal tender was that he was hoping that immigrants would send their family Bitcoin to El Salvador. So, I mean, since Bitcoin has number go up technology, right? So, so if families are sending Bitcoin over to their other family members in El Salvador and they hold that Bitcoin, I mean, they would be better off, right? Devaluing currency over time. So I think that's that was one of his intentions as well, that people from El Salvador would naturally also become richer just by holding Bitcoin in general from the money that's coming into the country. Basically.
Yeah. So their adoption of Bitcoin will affect the remittance space. That's exactly, because we were talking about remittances and I'm looking at my private message and I'm like, wait, whoa. So yeah, that's exactly what I was curious about your opinion on that. So good. I know that there were some Latin American Litecoin accounts. Were you involved with any of those, or were you aware of them on X?
I was aware, I think once like Trinaciones Español, I wasn't running it, but I think it kind of paused, right?
I think so. They were doing like retweets with translations and somebody was running it for a while. And I didn't know if it might have been you. I didn't know.
No, it wasn't me, but I think for a while I did tweet in Spanish myself off my Lighthouse account just for like a month, just to see how engagement would, like if I would like pick up any followers from Latin America. And I don't think that went very well because like there's hardly any engagement with my Spanish tweets. But maybe if I would have kept that at maybe there would have been success, but it was just like night and day difference from English to Spanish. But saying that, I think, I mean, the most tech savvy Mexicans, they usually do understand English. So I think there is going to be like a natural effect where English speaking Mexicans that are like kind of like tech savvy-ish, that they are going to start to pass that information down to their family members and all of that.
Sorry?
I'm hoping it will, at least.
Yeah, I mean, even in, US here, I mean, so many people still are unaware of crypto. I mean, I think if we're on X and that's where you and I met, Twitter, once upon a time it was Twitter and that's when we met. But, like we're kind of in our own echo chamber ecosystem, but it's like, even here where I would think it's bigger perhaps than other locations in the world, like still we're way early. And I forget about that. Like I forget we're still early, like even 13 years and with Litecoin is still early. 15 years with Bitcoin is still early. Because we're used to all of this. We're used to the kind of bathing in this content and like we know it all and everything else. And like still most people aren't using it more than ever before, but it's still not common. Although like what we describe with remittances makes a whole lot of sense, fractions of a penny versus 6, 10 or beyond. I'm sure it's a lot more than that if you're setting that $7,000 limit that I quoted. And she couldn't give me it off the top of her head because there's like tiers of fees that stack into it. So I didn't get an official quote on that maximum send out. But
Okay.
it's complicated. Yeah, and that's true. It's complicated. It's not, oh, I have an address and this is how much I want to designate. Bam. It's just way simpler with Litecoin. And I think that's a compelling reason to get into Litecoin, if for no other reason, is if you have this, like what you experienced with, you had, a relationship over, across the border, and that was the fastest, cheapest way to do it. And hopefully the exchange wasn't that expensive to liquidate out, right? That would be probably the only thing you'd have to consider, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's huge. Obviously, there's a lot of other things going on in Litecoin, and sometimes I'm paying attention and sometimes I'm not. I think it's good to live life and go out and put your hands in the dirt and, talk to other people in the world. So I try not to live on my phone, but I'm there, fairly often. And, but what's going on that's exciting you in Litecoin? Maybe we can graze now. We talked about the remittances, and I appreciate your perspective on that because we never actually talked about that on the show. And I think that's huge. Probably not going away. It's definitely not going away. It's going to grow. The demand is going to increase. And hopefully we can get more activity on Litecoin as more awareness, comes out. So maybe we need to start something there, but word of mouth for now. But what else in terms of Litecoin? We can land the plane on the topic. Well done. We did it in terms of episode number 23, remittances. But in terms of just what's interesting you in Litecoin?
What I'm most excited about is, at the moment, probably Robbie Coleman's VPN kind of rebranding. I thought that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw like he presented that, at first it didn't really like click. I was kind of, I'm not sure what this is. I thought it was going to be like a new feature coming out or something, but later on he elaborated on it. I was like, whoa, like this is huge. This is like genius level marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about right now. Because, over the years, we kind of hear like the same talking points in Litecoin, right? We have kind of like the same discussions going on for like months and months and months. And then all of a sudden, like this comes out of left field, like VPN.
Yeah.
And it's so genius because it's so relatable. Like almost everyone knows what a VPN is. The other day, I was asking my wife as well if she knew what a VPN was, and she had an idea. She's not like the type to use one at all, but she kind of had an idea what it was. She's like, "Oh, that's something about like browsing privately, right?" I was like, "Yeah." So if you know what VPN is, VPN is going to make so much sense.
Yeah, and we're having it embedded in a lot of browsers too. Brave was, I think, one of the Tor would have been the original one, right? Tor was like the OG. Encrypted browser. But like Brave, that came out with the BAT token. What is it? The Mozilla guy. That was 2017, 18 or something. It's been around a while now. Great browser. They have it built in. I know Opera has a VPN built in. A lot of the virus software that you can add, whether it's like AVG or whatever, they have VPN options. So like everybody's offering VPNs now, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think Robbie's laying it out like, all these nodes, across the planet. Which one do you want? Like the infrastructure kind of does mirror like a VPN. Like if you use Proton, you can pick which country you want to be in, and like it's like nodes. You're like all over the map, right? Just like kind of this like feel. Like what am I operating within? It's like a network of things that are not near me, but I can use, and that is what Litecoin is. And I believe he quoted 1 billion people using 1 billion or 1.5 billion people are using VPN yearly or regularly. That's a lot. But thinking about what we're talking about, like, maybe something needs to be done with that because so MWeb is going to be MWeb forever in terms of like Litecoiners knowing Litecoin, right? It's not going away. I think there was some confusion. And by the way, I'm not speaking for Robbie. This is just me observing. I don't speak for him. You can check out our last episode with him. And I know he was on Spaces recently. And he also, gave a whole presentation on this at the summit. But, and I think he and I agree on this, but it's like, MWeb's not going away. It's never going away. We know what it is. Like that is what was built. It is MWeb. but people can use MWeb without knowing it is MWeb, right? And if so many people are using, whether it's NordVPN, ExpressVPN, Proton VPN, whatever it is, they can just have an option to have like a financial layer on that and click it, and then that can be basically powered by Litecoin. That's how I was seeing it, and that's huge to get those integrations. I think you'd only need one to start with the integration, and then you might be able to see it mapped across, just like MWeb in a mobile wallet, right? Light Wallet and now Cake, and I bet Stack we'll get it, and a bunch of other wallets will add that later. So that would be super exciting. And I don't know what conversations he had. He alluded to them, but he didn't specify what they were, and that's fine. So I'm excited to see what happens. But kind of in the same way, I'm going long here, but kind of in the same way what we're describing, the MONEYGRAM report is already looking at stablecoins and cryptocurrency. It's already like quoted. And imagine if you could also embed Litecoin in MONEYGRAM or Western Union and have those next to no fees, and they don't know they're using Litecoin, but Litecoin is being used. That could be done too at the organizational level, and they're already looking at that.
If I'm not, I think right now that we're talking about this, didn't MoneyGram integrate Litecoin like a couple of years ago, or there was like some announcement from them, wasn't there? I'm trying to remember.
They might have. I don't have my browser up, but they might have. But their folks are interested in crypto, and you can see that the most compelling, it was like a survey with like 1,000 people. It was done earlier this year, and they said, what are basically the top reasons why you would migrate away from what we're serving you? And they said if they can find something cheaper and faster. That was the number one, 51%, 47% or something like this. So our use case is there, like big time. So maybe it's already happening. I don't use it. I didn't see any like, lights going off when I looked at their website saying that they're powered by Litecoin or cryptos. Like they alluded to it, but maybe there's an integration there I don't know about. There, it could be. I hope so. But then it shouldn't be $6. But
Litecoin is pretty much integrated almost everywhere now that like nothing surprises me anymore. It's like I think MoneyGram integrated Litecoin. I don't remember, but something there sounds kind of familiar.
Well, PayPal has it, Venmo has it, Cash App doesn't have it because they're maxis, at least for now. I don't know about Zelle. I don't think there's anything there, but Venmo has it and PayPal has it with withdrawal options now. Of course, if you just get on an exchange, if you wish to do it that way, that's fine. And of course, wallet to wallet would be the preferred method for those capable of doing such a thing. But I mean, I'm just saying for a visibility point, clearly we have channels for Litecoin already. It is one of the most liquid, like wherever Bitcoin is, there's Litecoin. So like Bitcoin El Salvador, of course, great. Litecoin El Salvador, like it's going to be there unless there's an intention to remove it, which that has existed. BitPay was kind of a case for that for a little while, but that's been one, right? We all know how we're doing on BitPay since we've been added, right? Number one. So, but I think for the folks that aren't thinking about Coinbases, Krakens, international exchanges, cryptocurrency at all, but they're thinking of Western Union and MoneyGram, that would be a huge kind of gateway for them to use it without them caring, right? Mm-hmm. If they offered that ramp, right, which would save them fees and things. So again, perhaps this happens. If you're watching and you know about something, please leave a comment and correct myself and my guest. But I think there's a huge opportunity there if it doesn't already exist. So yeah, I'm with you on BPM. I think that's awesome. I think it's a really great concept, and I think we need to be palatable to grow.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool having a creative working for Litecoin, like Robbie, because I mean, most of us, we tend to be, we kind of lean like a little technical. And there's nothing wrong with like being technical, but say like engineers who are actually working on the protocol, like, day in, day out, just looking at code, like they're really good at that, but perhaps like they're not the ideal people to be like trying to figure out these marketing strategies for technology. Because I mean, the common person, I think BPM like for example, clicks a lot more easily than say like MWeb would. Like MWeb, it's like sounds very technical, and if you explain it to people, they're probably gonna be like, what the hell are you talking about?" You know? So I think it's really good having. I mean, because I think about this pretty often, and I think Litecoin literally has everything going for it in its favor, pretty much. Like it's super well positioned, high liquidity on every exchange. Institutions like it, it's on Venmo, like you were saying, like all these big companies. But I think we kind of need to sway a little bit further away from the technicalities, because technicalities is mostly to attract people already kind of like within crypto that have already been within crypto for many years, which is fine, right? I mean, if you want to like bring someone over from Bitcoin to over to Litecoin, I mean, you sometimes you have to be a little technical, but I don't think it's going to do so much for attracting someone who's brand new to crypto into Litecoin. So I think it's awesome also being a little bit more general and creative in that sense.
I think sometimes do we just assume like we're just going to have a bunch of like our society will just become us and, care about block times and, consensus and Bitcoin or Litecoin improvement proposals, or like no one thinks about any of this. Like, so that's I think the key with the VPM is that they're using it and they don't know it, and I think that's what is inevitable, and I think that will come. Right, it's already happening. We're just, like I said, early days, but where the world will use Litecoin without knowing it. And I know even our first conversation with David Burkett on episode 1, we kind of alluded to that, and he's like, at the end of the day, what he believed was like people won't even know what they're using, but it'll be the base layer. So I think that's correct. I mean, I think some will be interested like we are, and like I put this podcast hoping someone else will care, and they do, because we have listeners all over the place, and I'm grateful for what we see here. I'm grateful for the X community. I'm grateful for the Litecoin community. I'm grateful for our summits, and I think that is important to have operating in the world, or none of this would ever happen. But I think the great onboarding, some of it's going to be through traditional finance, like, oh, it's infidelity, it's a new way to invest, and I'm okay with that. But I mean, to use it as money, that was kind of the first, cause of all of this. And like, that's not what's been happening as much lately. So we need to kind of reclaim that. And again, speaking of Robbie, he's focused on that. And I think that's what needs to grow. So whether it's a MoneyGram using Litecoin, or your VPN service operating with a VPN, like all of that's integrating what we've got and what we offer without kind of expressly naming it. And I think that invisible technology will be great. And it doesn't matter if you know it's Litecoin or not. The point is it works, and it works very well. And there are a lot of advantages. Of course, I would love people to like praise the brand, Litecoin, right? And I do. Like that's why I'm here and you're here. But like I'm cool with it, like just as long as we're growing and we're doing what we need to do, right? And that means whether it's the person's using it, like, I don't know, agnostically, if that's the right term, but it's exciting. We're doing very well as a currency in realm of cryptocurrencies, but cryptocurrencies are kind of with just crypto people right now. But the bridge is, let's get beyond that, right? But to be fair, CBDCs they're kind of, the mainstream is borrowing our language, to be fair. Governments are borrowing our language, right?
Yeah. Seems like they're interested, but they don't really want to display their interest. It's like a weird situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we'll see what happens. I think I don't want to get into politics, but I don't know if these elections are going to have any if they're going to change anything about crypto. I probably not, but yeah, I mean, we can only hope that as the digital age continues to grow and more people, I mean, almost everyone is already on their phones all day, right? And the newer generations, I mean, they probably learn to type it before they learn to write. Hopefully crypto just continues growing in that regard. Probably will. I think we're on the right side of history, hopefully.
I think we are. And And the idea of the central bank digital currency, they do posit it like a crypto. So that's what I mean. Like we've won.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're kind of carbon copying, the cat out of the bag, namely Bitcoin and blockchain. Like they're mimicking it, they're mirroring it. So in that sense, we have to credit this space as kind of a powerhouse because the government is confirming it and wanting to mimic it. Of course, they're not going to decentralize it and have all of our attributes, and that's the major problem. It'll be worse than the current system, in my opinion. But our language has swayed them.
Definitely.
So I think that's huge. We don't have to keep going. I do want to ask though. You tweeted about what you just alluded to about whether Trump or Kamala gets in. You don't see it doing. You don't see it having any sort of major effects on the trajectory of Litecoin. Because if you were in Nashville and there was a lot of hype there, and Trump was in town and RFK was in town, and they were at the Bitcoin conference, they were saying a lot of things about what they're going to do, which was very historic. I mean, I have to say, hearing a politician speak in such a way, it was actually quite flattering. Now, they're very good at flattering.
Were you there?
No. Well, I was in town for Litecoin, but I didn't go to the Bitcoin summit or the Bitcoin Nashville. But I on the drive home, I listened to it.
Okay.
And like seeing like a presidential candidate talking about Ross Ulbricht and like all this stuff, you would have never thought anybody would even bring this up. And like, this is actually, so it was actually pretty moving. Like whoever wrote these speeches, like they kind of dialed it in and nailed it. So the hype was there. And I think there is something good about excitement with these elections. And I do think they have an impact, but at the end of the day, anything could happen. And you're of the opinion, it seems, that regardless of who wins, it's not really going to affect the trajectory of Litecoin. Maybe just kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just personal feelings and from things that we've already been seeing over the past few years. If Kamala is actually just going to be kind of a continuation of Biden, I mean, we have to kind of think about how Litecoin has done from a regulation standpoint over the last few years, and I think it's been okay. I mean, the CFTC said it's a commodity. The SEC hasn't really said anything, so I think that's, I mean, if the CFTC is already saying it's a commodity, I really doubt the SEC is going to come out and say, oh, you know what, it actually seems to be a security.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Gary one time mentioned that it is possible for an asset to be both. But I mean, he just said recently that Bitcoin is not a security. He literally declared that. And if that's the case, like there's just no way that Litecoin is a security either, because they were both launched pretty much the same. And I've mentioned this before, and I think it's actually a popular opinion now within the Litecoin community that Litecoin very likely had a sounder beginning than Bitcoin, because the initial year that Bitcoin was born, Satoshi was mining mostly for himself
alone. Yeah.
So, and Litecoin was pre-announced. I think there were thousands of miners ready from day one.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it launched, like there were already 1,000 people participating. And I think Litecoin is sounder. Like say like we're trying to take the security, like Gary has like his classifications of what a security is. That a lot of people have trouble trying to understand his framework, but
Mm-hmm.
Litecoin is actually, like on paper, probably had a sounder launch than Bitcoin. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, I mean, going back to what you were saying about Kamala and Trump, I mean, Trump, he's pro crypto. So if he wins, it's very likely that crypto, like everything's just going to start going up. I mean, I assume there's a lot of factors, like there might be some like macro event, everything that we go into recession or something. But technically speaking, if he wins, it's good for crypto. And if Kamala wins, I think it's just going to be a continuation where possibly the SEC, they're going to continue going after coins that are securities. Kind of what's been going on, and the few that were fairly launched are going to be just existing as they already currently are.
Mm-hmm. Interesting take. I tend to agree with what you're saying. Yeah. I won't add anything more there, but I appreciate it. Before we end the episode, and I give you your closing statement, you have to comment about international vegetables, because I saw a tweet saying that, they're just not as good in America. So what's going on with our vegetables?
I don't know if it's the climate. I have no idea. Actually, I think it's that food has to travel very large distances to arrive to their destination in the US. And in, say, like Mexico, a lot of times I'm eating strawberries that were grown from like a farm that was like half an hour away, where they sold it to me. Now, I don't know why here in the US, like I go to I buy fruit and a lot of it is flavorless. I don't know why. And then you cross the border to Mexico and everything it's like super tasty. The melon has a bunch of like it just I don't know how to explain it. It's just that something in the food in the US is lacking, basically.
Well, as long as you're not going to show me a video of a plastic strawberry, I'm okay. No, there's been videos like surfacing about, like, again, we're getting into conspiracy, and I'm not putting that on you. I'm just connecting that dot where people are like, and I don't know where people are coming up with these videos. They're claiming they're getting like rubber vegetables like mixed in with their strawberries, but who knows? I haven't had any of those, but I don't want to say it's impossible. But I do know that I've heard very good things about the Mexican produce, and of course, we get a lot of it here in Texas and California and other places. And it has to do with the soil and a lot of things. But I hear just like the quality of produce there is just like really amazing, which is great. I mean, people need actual food, like real food, right? And a lot of the soil has been so depleted, and there's a lot of like debates on whether or not the fruits even offered the amount of vitamins they did at one point in time. So I'm thinking you're getting very good fruits and vegetables from Mexico. So the best thing we can do here is grow our own in the meantime, or source it. I mean, there's still decent food, but I resonated with what you're saying about the qualitative difference of vegetables across the border.
Have you ever eaten jicama?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
You should. They probably have at HEB, but it's like this Mexican vegetable that I'm sure you've seen it before. Like,
I think I had a vegetarian taco with it as a replacement of a protein, but that was when I was in LA.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes we use it for tortillas and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
but
that's when I had it.
They put like hot sauce on it and they cut it up into little pieces. But anyways, like if you go to the store here in the US, you almost always see it waxed. There's like a thin layer of wax covering it just to prevent it from like looking bad, I guess. And that to me is just like, what the hell? I mean, in Mexico they don't put wax around it to make it look good, you know?
Yeah, they don't need to. And perishable things are perishable. Like, that's part of nature, right? And we're not going to go into preservatives. I mean, you're a dentist. I mean, that would actually be quite interesting. And I'm in the medical realm, but yeah, there's a lot of problems with our food, and a lot of it's voluntary too. We're eating. It's sad. And this is they're based in Austin, but pretty sure you can get them anywhere. They're called S-CRYPT, right? And they're actually pretty clean ingredients for like tortilla chips or just potato chips or whatever that they use. They use non-seed oils, and like you can understand what all of their ingredients are. And then of course yesterday was announced that Pepsi Corp bought them. So kind of sad. It's like the one brand that you can like seek out to be like a decent food that's not a bunch of things you can't pronounce has been gobbled up by a megacorp. But it won't change immediately. And this is the worst case scenario that of course they're going to degrade it. It's going to be horrible. Like, that doesn't necessarily have to happen, because people's appetites can change, and we can request and put our money in the things we care about. They could be preserved. So I don't want to like gloom and doom this sort of thing. I think we tend to be that way. But if it is degraded, it's not going to be immediate. It'll be like, oh, check the bag in 5 years and compare it. with like these subtle differences over time, kind of like how Gatorade when it came out was basically just magnesium, potassium, salt, and water, and like maybe one flavor. Like read it now, you're not going to understand anything that's in it. But anyway, we are way beyond the scope right now. But I appreciated having you on. I hope somebody can consider Litecoin when they're thinking about remittances. And of course, just follow Al because he's great and has a lot of awesome content on X. So again, it's Lite_HAUSE. And this is Aldo. So did you want to close with anything, sir?
Yes, that this shirt is awesome, Satoshi Light, and you can get it on the store. So please go to the store.
Thank you.
It comes out with awesome merch.
I don't talk about the store really ever on this show. I did with Vlad because that was super cool, and we came out with the BTC TKVR collaboration, and somebody needs to make the third version of it, and the fourth and the fifth, and we can have a whole array. I commit to buy every copy as long as it's not like overtly price gouging and be like, oh, I made a new edition, you can pay me $1,000. Then I'm not going to do it. But the point is, if it's reasonable, I would love to add all of them, whoever creates new versions of it and adds more content. But no, the store's cool. Thank you. And by the way, I didn't mail this to him. He actually shopped, and I get to see those things for the people that support us. So I do thank you, sir, for wearing it and sporting it. I remember your post. You were outside, and you were blue laser, but it was a great picture. So I always love it. I mean, anybody that cares about something that I envisioned, and I mean, this one is a parody, so I didn't have to do a whole lot there. Although I'm very glad the way it came out. I'm like, why didn't we think of this sooner? Because we always see those Satoshi Nirvana shirts. We break the syllable trend, Nirvana, Satoshi. I know we kind of ruined it with the Satoshi Light, but we kept at least the Satoshi convention intact. And of course, rather than a buzzed, stoned smiley face, you got a great chicken. So we like the chicken. So I like that. I'm grateful for your support, sir. So check out the 84 million shop, and maybe some other time we can talk more about all that stuff with some other guest. Who cares? But anyway, follow Al, and we'll close it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, and be well, and have a good night, sir. We'll be in touch.
You too. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yes, sir.